Well, hello, everyone. I have 12 o'clock noon, so we're going to go ahead and get our BID annual meeting started today. My name is Michael Stevens, and I'm the president of the Capitol Riverfront BID. And we use today as a way to celebrate the past year with both its ups and its downs. And it's a way to recognize a number of people that have contributed to the year as well. So we have a busy day ahead of us, and of course, we're in virtual world. We miss seeing everyone. I want to say that at the very top of the show. We miss seeing all of you at Nationals Park and being able to greet you in person and meet together and eat together. And hopefully we'll be able to return to that format next January, a year from now. We're going to feature a lot of things today. We're going to have remarks by our board chair, remarks by our Adam Gooch, remarks by our Ward 6 council member, Charles Allen. The clean team will be recognized in awards giving. We're going to give out our foundation awards, private sector foundation awards. I'll be delivering the State of the Capitol Riverfront that gives you a quick snapshot and summary of the past year in development terms and events and marketing and PR and parks and open spaces. And we're going to close the day with a panel on the COVID-19 impacts on 3 core economies, as well as what does a recovery from that look like. I think the quote at the bottom is very important for today and for the year we've just had. We've come through a year like no other, stressful and overwhelming and ever-changing. And so that's when we look for the constants in our life that do recreate some sense of normalcy for us in these ever-changing times. And so we're going to proceed with that in mind. As you can see, as I mentioned, we do release our annual report. There's the cover and one of the inset pages. It's called A Constant Foundation in a Year of Change. And I think that's so important a topic for us this year, for everyone. Across the United States and across the world, we have looked and struggled for those constants in an ever-changing world full of challenges and unforeseeables, if you will. So I would encourage you at the end of today, please go to our website, www.capitolriverfront.org, and download the report and enjoy it. I want to thank Ted Jutras on our team for shepherding that project. We also like to look at front page headlines that we've torn from the periodicals today. And several things we wanted to emphasize. One, that drive-in movies are back, and they were very, very popular at the 100 V Street lot in Buzzard Point. And we thank Ackridge for providing that and our sponsorships of the movie series that we had in the fall, as well as during the 12 days of Cap Riv. Buzzard Point is now an established sub-area and neighborhood, and it's delivering more. We had 1,000 units deliver. The Buzzard Point Owners Committee collaborated to create this beautiful mural there. The same can be said of Half Street. It is established, and more than 2/3 of the new streetscape that was a partnership between the property owners there and the district government. Thank you, Charles Allen and other council members, for funding this beautiful streetscape project, which is now a true gateway to Nationals Park and a celebratory zone. We also saw a residential surge continue. We had 10 residential buildings deliver in 2020. And we also had 12 under construction. Our population is rising. The popularity of our neighborhood remains, which is great. And then the popularity of our parks and open spaces and access to the river and the Anacostia River itself reached a new height. These are one of the constants in our neighborhood, and I think people really came to appreciate access to the outdoors. And then the visage that you see of the new, beautiful Frederick Douglass Bridge. We saw the last arch component installed. The bridge is well on its way to delivering in September, October of this year. And it's a beautiful new addition to the infrastructure and the gateway to our neighborhood and the city itself and the U.S. Capitol complex. A very beautiful project. We've kind of lived by this motto that the secret of success is the constancy of purpose. And I mentioned before that in this ever-changing life that we've undertaken over the past year, that we did have to have constants and a sense of purpose that was unwavering as we went forward. So we realized, all of us, it was a year of constant change, challenges, and resiliency. Challenges are what make life interesting. Overcoming them is what makes life meaningful. So we had the constant presence of the pandemic, the constant loss of life, jobs, businesses, threats to our everyday life. Uncertainty was a constant. Messages changed almost daily, if not weekly, from different platforms. And so it really disrupted our routines and our perceptions of the world and our normalcy. So the new normal was anything but normal. So I think that was the challenge to a lot of us involved in this, from our national leaders to state and local, the Mayor Bowser and DC Council. So we looked at where we could find constants in our lives, and they emerged in our neighborhood as the Anacostia River, a peaceful, beautiful visage of nature that we could walk by and enjoy, connecting us to 1,600 parks. The investment that the city made in Yards Park and Canal Park, people took great advantage of them. They were a beautiful setting for outdoor relief. Our retailers really brought a new meaning to the word resilience as they pivoted and changed to operate in ever-changing conditions. And I think throughout all of this, through programming and people participating, we've had a constant sense of community. And then I want to celebrate our bid, but like all the other bids, the other 10 bids, a total of 11, we provided constant services in the public realm, like our clean team and business assistance and communications, that we think were valuable and went hand in glove with the leadership from the district government. These were important to us in such an uncertain time. So as a result, we sat down as a bid with our executive committee, our bid team and the board, and we refocused our priorities and realized there were 6 guiding principles that we wanted to adhere to. One was maintaining the quality, a high quality of the parks and public realm. You see 3 of our clean team members there. They do yeoman's work and they were our front line of defense. We wanted to constantly communicate and share information on the pandemic guidelines. We wanted to provide marketing and PR support and build community. We realized the parks took on a new definition of use. They were closed for a while, reopened, and we had to exhibit social distancing. We really wanted to track trends and inform our stakeholders what was happening from a development standpoint and lease up and occupancy, so they had real-time information. So understanding those trends and communicating it. And then we wanted to support our local businesses to help them survive, not only in the difficulties of the spring and summer, but now that we're in winter, through winterization programs. So these are our North Stars, if you will, for this year, and they will continue on into 2021. We also provided assistance during the COVID-19 response by the district government and others. Our clean teams were out 7 days a week, and I mentioned they were invaluable to keeping a public realm that was clean and looked normal. Our bid professional team supported the World Central Kitchen and their preparation of thousands and thousands, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of meals at Nationals Park, and we delivered over 13,000 of those meals in the spring and summer. Our group pulled together and created a GoFundMe page for Van Ness Elementary and raised $10,000 for their computer tablets and meals for the needy families. We participated with the district government. Mayor Bowser gave us all lots of PPE supplies in the district council, and we distributed those. We did a second round before Christmas. The district government set up 2 COVID-19 testing centers in our neighborhood at Nats Park and Canal Park, which were a wonderful way for people to find if they had contracted the disease. And then we purchased 150 heaters and 50 tents and had them distributed to our restaurants and retailers that wanted to remain open in the winter months. And I think this was a wonderful effort that Ted, again, coordinated, and Susan. We have had the good fortune of having a board of directors that really has been a guiding light for us as well. We've also had a great executive committee. It's fortunate that we have these folks in place and that they're dedicated. Both the clean team is so dedicated, my professional staff is so dedicated, and the board and our executive committee is so dedicated. So I want to give a shout out to all of them. My team is Bonnie Trine, Ted Jutras, Dan Melman, Tony Boyd, Grace Acella, Susan Hampton, Jeff Jamawat, and Emily Mangum. And I want to commend them for the way they have pivoted and taken on new responsibilities and learned how to telecommute. And we all got together once a week via Zoom to discuss things. I want to commend the board of directors for being with us along this journey and meeting with us quarterly to give us their advice and their wonderful guidance. And then I want to commend the executive committee who met with us more than every other quarter. We had some interesting budget discussions and had to make some choices, but they were right there with us as well. And then I want to thank Adam Gooch for his leadership over the past year as our director he was our board chair. This was his first year. What a year, Adam, to come into leadership position with the bid, but you did it admirably. We appreciated your support and the support of the board. And so now I want to introduce Adam Gooch, who's a senior vice president for development at Akridge, to make remarks on behalf of the board of directors. Adam, I'm going to turn it over to you, sir.
Thanks, Michael. And good afternoon. Happy New Year, everybody. Thanks for attending the Capitol Riverfront Bids virtual annual meeting to take a look at the past year. As Michael said, I'm Adam Gooch. I work at Akridge, and I've had the pleasure of being the chair of the board, and it's been an interesting year for the past year. Michael said this would be easy, and it was an interesting year, but Michael and his staff do make it easy. But we still can't meet in person. It is important for us to gather virtually and take a look back as well as a look forward. Who could have foreseen the year we just experienced? Right, 2020 was memorable. It was filled with challenges, tragedy, uncertainty, and some hope for a new vaccine. And Washington, D.C. was a microcosm of all the things that happened on a state and national scale due to the pandemic, and how we as a community could adapt and respond. And amid all the challenges and sad pandemic news, there were bright spots that illustrated the resolve and determination of our elected officials, our citizen leaders, the businesses, the restaurants, and the associations that represent us and the core economies. The Capitol Riverfront bid was certainly no exception, and we experienced both the highs and the lows this year. With the downturn in our economy, some businesses that shut down, the closing of some parks, schools, and open spaces, we still saw the delivery of 14 new buildings. And we saw the continued construction of the South Capitol Street Bridge, and remarkably, the opening of 21 new retailers in the neighborhood. The BID's annual membership meeting offers us an opportunity to reflect on the past year and recognize the people and activities and efforts that made it a memorable year, even during a pandemic. And part of that look back is the release of our 2020 annual report, which I hope you will view on our website and download it to your computer. It's also a time to thank the individuals and groups that persevered and continue to make the bid a great neighborhood in which to live, to work, to play. And that's what it is. So some of those that we celebrate today are, of course, first and foremost, the BID's clean team members. They continue to provide their services to the public 7 days a week throughout the pandemic. They do difficult work, and they do it with a smile on their face, and we are exceptionally grateful to every single one of them. The builders and developers who continue to build these wonderful projects in our neighborhood, even despite the downturn, and delivering new retail spaces and spaces for new office and new apartments. Our partners at the DC government, who provided funding for several public realm improvements in the neighborhood, and afforded us some opportunities to capture some public space to support outdoor dining. I would like to thank the 28 members of the BID's board of directors. They provided guidance and oversight to the executive committee, to Michael and his staff, and to me throughout the year. And then importantly, the BID's professional staff, the 9 that Michael just rattled off. I think we all owe them a debt of gratitude, not only for shepherding the organization through these unprecedented times in a fiscally responsible way, but for seamlessly pivoting from some of their traditional roles to support the neighborhood by doing things that Michael mentioned earlier, such as delivering meals and face masks to those in need, fundraisers. They found creative ways to promote our local restaurants. They hosted drive-in movies because we couldn't hold traditional events. We couldn't do our concerts. And they did things like rolling out new economic development reports in their ongoing effort to support all of us. Thank you. It's been an honor to work with each and every one of those groups. And I'm incredibly grateful to have the opportunity to spend some time and help them. Michael spoke about the constants in our lives as the pandemic surged and our daily routines were upended. I would suggest that the groups I just referenced served as a foundation for constancy in our neighborhood and responded daily to the challenges that kept coming. I thank all of you for your ongoing commitment to the Capitol Riverfront and the ongoing operations of the bid. Thank you for attending today's meeting. And I wish each and every one of you a happier, healthier, and hopefully more normal 2021. Hopefully that shouldn't be easy. That shouldn't be difficult. Sorry. So now I'll turn it over, Michael, to Charles Allen, who's our Ward 6 council member, who's been a great partner for us for the past 5 years. I think Charles will make some remarks. Council member.
Thanks so much, Adam. I appreciate it. I'm Ward 6 Councilor Charles Allen, and good afternoon to everyone. Really honored to have a few minutes to spend some time to talk about the great work and the value of the Capitol Riverfront bid. Normally around this time, we think the inauguration, it's usually a pretty special time for DC residents. When we think about from our front lawns, we get to watch the peaceful transfer of power take place. And with a short walk or a metro ride, we take our kids or we join our neighbors to witness one of the most important parts of our democracy. And I know that the events of the last week has changed a lot for a lot of people. I think everyone on this call felt shaken in a way that we hadn't before. Being steps from the Capitol has taken on a very different meaning. And frankly, DC residents have endured a lot over the last year. We've hosted rallies and marches. We've been just down the street from some of the most consequential moments in our nation's political history. But between an insurrection on January 6th and 10 of a global pandemic that has threatened our society and community in so many ways, not the least of which is that almost all of us probably know somebody who we've lost to this pandemic. And I've thought about, how do we cope? How have we all coped and managed through these hard times when there's been loss and pain around us? I think sometimes it's really being able to focus on the things that we can control, as well as finding the small spaces that bring us together to actually help celebrate what binds us together and gives us the hope and resolve for the better tomorrow that we know we're all working toward. Michael, I'm really glad in your opening comments, I heard you talk about the Anacostia River. I appreciate you doing that. For folks that don't know, I have two little ones at home, and for 10 months, we've been having school at the dining room table and in our bedrooms. And let me tell you, and the parents here on the call will understand, there's only so many times you can convince a 4 and an 8-year-old to just go for a walk around the block. So we've done a lot of hikes across our city. And one of our favorite places where we know that we can find an open and a safe and a welcoming space is heading down to Yards Park and the Capitol Riverfront. And I know that I'm not alone, though. DC residents have rediscovered a love and a need for green space, open space, and access to our outdoors, especially the Anacostia River, and maybe enjoy a takeout meal or two to support our local businesses and workers in the process. And our challenge to reach residents, to help get information out, to help maintain a sense of order, I want to say I'm incredibly grateful to the Capitol Riverfront bid for being such a great partner in meeting a lot of the unique challenges that we're facing and doing so on the fly. I always know I can pick up the phone and get an assist from the bid's clean team if we need to quickly mobilize folks to get something done. My team can count on the bid to get information out about funds for business support, testing and vaccines for residents, groceries, PPE, and more. And that's on top of all the regular duties of maintaining some of the city's best parks and common spaces to help foster that growth of a vibrant neighborhood. And that reliability means a lot to me as a local elected representative. I'm incredibly proud to represent this community and the strong stance my neighbors, constituents, our businesses, and community partners have taken in confronting what feels like so many challenges all at the same time. So I want to say a huge thanks to the entire Capitol Riverfront bid team for your hard work. I know you're all feeling the same stress. You're processing the same news that I am day in and day out. And I appreciate the diligence and the hard work you show up to every day on the job. So thank you all so very much to the bid team, to the board, and to everybody who plays a role in that. So again, I want to thank everybody for having the opportunity to join you today. And now it's my honor to help introduce Susan Hampton, who is the bid's Director of Public Realm.
Thank you, Councilman Allen. It's so nice to join you all today. As the Director of the Public Realm, it's my pleasure to lead the CLEAN team. I'd like to tell you about all their hard work and dedication during 2020, a crazy year, which was defined by the coronavirus. The CLEAN team has remained hard at work dealing with trash, graffiti, sidewalk sweeping, decorating, delivering PPE, and special events. A lot of important behind-the-scenes efforts, which may go unnoticed unless they came to a halt. Keeping the neighborhood clean and safe is integral to the constant foundation, and the Men in Blue delivered in 2020. Just put your minds at ease. The first photo of the CLEAN team was taken a few months before COVID-19 hit, so the guys were not in any danger of being unmasked. All told, we have 18 full-time members and 2 part-timers. During the pandemic, in an effort to keep the team safe, we spaced out shifts, going from morning and evening to 3 smaller shifts. We broke the guys into pods to reduce the possibility of COVID running through the entire group. The Men in Blue followed all safety protocols, and our safety precautions have worked extremely well so far. We know we've been very fortunate. Many of us have benefited from working from home and isolating in an effort to stop the spread. The daily work of keeping the neighborhood clean and safe does not allow such a luxury. The CLEAN team is out 365 days a year because leaves don't stop falling and trash doesn't stop accumulating just because a pandemic hits. The initial reduction of people on the streets provided a brief lull in trash. This was quickly replaced by restless people getting outside, utilizing the parks, and taking to the streets to get a change of scenery, sometimes trying out new projects like graffiti. The clean team did a wonderful job pivoting, changing routes and schedules to accommodate new surges of takeout trash and trail use. Over the past year, the clean team removed 95,000 bags of trash from our neighborhood and worked over 42,000 hours. Getting a third truck helped spread the guys out more, both physically and allowing them to cover more ground geographically as Buzzard Point has come online. Seeing the men in blue out on the streets provides a sense of normalcy and is reassuring during these unprecedented times. The clean team won't let weather, protest, or pandemic keep them from their essential work. In a normal year, I would ask for a round of applause to show our appreciation for the guys. But this year, I just ask you to give the team a wave or an air high five and thank you when you see them on the streets. We appreciate all the clean team members' hard work, but today we want to give a special recognition to two men who really stood out this year. First up is our Hall of Fame winner, Joseph Wright Bay. Joe is joining our Hall of Fame, reserved for the most elite team members who have put in the serious time and dedication to the bid. Joe's been with us for 10 years. He is truly a mentor for the younger team members and leads by example. Joe is always willing to help with special projects. I really appreciate how he identifies an issue and just works to resolve it without prompting. His worldly experience makes him a natural problem solver and trusted member of the team. Joe's award is in keeping with this year's theme, a constant foundation. Joe's constant dedication has not gone unnoticed, and we appreciate everything he does for the bid. And last but not least, our Employee of the Year is Dominique Moses. Dom, or Damo, is one of the newer members of our team. He's a hard worker and is even keel. Excellent attributes in these tumultuous times. Dom gets the job done and always has an amazing attitude, no matter what the weather or other challenges presented. Dominic works the most difficult route in the bid, without complaint, always showing up on time, soldiering through, and volunteering for special projects or extra landscaping projects. His hard work has not gone unnoticed. This award is very well deserved, and Dom's attitude also personifies constant foundation, because his work ethic and attitude do so much for the foundation of our clean team. Congrats to our two winners, and thanks again to the clean team. And now I'd like to turn it over to my colleagues Bonnie Trine and Ted Jutras for the presentation of the annual foundation awards.
Thank you, Susan, and thank you to each of our clean team members for your work throughout this past year. The bid created our annual foundation awards 6 years ago to honor the mighty contributions made by public and private stakeholders and partners to support the neighborhood's foundation for growth and success. This year, we have 2 private foundation awards to give to groups who have implemented and invested in 2 new sub-areas of the bid. The first private foundation award goes to the Buzzard Point Owners Committee, a group of property owners, including Ackridge, DC United, Donahoe, Douglas Development, MRP Realty, Pepco, PN Hoffman, Stewart Development, and Western Development, who have worked collectively and diligently over the past couple of years to implement advocacy efforts, infrastructure improvements, branding and placemaking, public realm activation, and design planning to ensure that the Buzzard Point neighborhood is successful. I myself have had the pleasure of working closely with several of these stakeholders to implement the Beauty of Buzzard Point, a new mural at the Pepco substation by local artists that honors the history and community along the substation safety structure. I've seen firsthand how they go above and beyond their own development projects to contribute to the greater good of a successful neighborhood. We appreciate the investments that are being made in placemaking, public realm improvements, and much more. Congratulations to the Buzzard Point Owners Committee on the efforts you've implemented and all that you continue to do. And although we must still adhere to social distancing and keep from presenting this award in person, it is nonetheless very well deserved. And now I'd like to turn it over to my colleague, Ted Jutras, for the second Private Foundation Award.
Thank you, Bonnie. Our second foundation award goes to our Half Street property owners. As with the Buzzard Point Owners Committee, the owners of the 4 properties along Half Street between M and N streets worked together towards the improvements of the public realm adjacent to their properties, and in doing so, made a substantial contribution to the neighborhood as a whole. The bid is pleased to present this award to Jair and Lynch Real Estate Partners, JBG Smith, Brandywine Realty Trust, and Spear Street Capital for their investment of time, effort, and money to create a new Half Street public plaza, the first phase of which was completed in 2020. As Capitol Riverfront approaches build-out and the post-COVID era brings thousands of new residents, workers, and visitors into the neighborhood every day, quality public spaces will become even more critical. The new Half Street, which was made possible by a partnership between these property owners and DDOT, delivers a world-class public street that prioritizes pedestrian experience, provides a flexible space for events and festivals, and will eventually provide a great game day experience before and after Nats games. A big hat tip also to our partners in DC government for their $2.2 million investment in this streetscape project. The Half Street owners were able to leverage those public dollars with an additional $6 million investment of their own to help create the beautiful streetscape that you can see today. We look forward to the completion of the streetscape, which will occur along with the development of Brandywine's 25M office building. Congratulations again to Jair Lynch, JBG Smith, Brandywine, and Spear Street, and thank you for your continued leadership. And now I will turn it back over to BID President Michael Stevens for our State of the Neighborhood, for the State of the Capitol Riverfront presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted, and thank you, Bonnie, and many thanks to the private sector partners of the Buzzard Point Owners Committee and the Half Street property owners who brought us such incredible new projects and new growth in two sub-areas of our neighborhood. And I also want to thank Susan for recognizing the CLEAN team and the awardees, Joe and Dominic. They have done incredible work this year, and we just can't thank them enough. They're an incredible group of guys, our men in blue. So at this point, we want to walk you through what's transpired over the past year in Capitol Riverfront. And as this illustration, or not illustration, but photo from the river shows, the neighborhood has grown dramatically. And we want to walk you through what some of those industry segments are and how they have progressed over the years. I put this chart up here. This is something that Ted and Jeff Jamawat on our team created. I had asked them to go parcel by parcel and lot by lot and really ascertain where we were in our development trajectory by the end of 2020 and what it might look forward going forward. We realized we're going to, at build out, have almost 37 million square feet of new high density mixed use development across all market segments. And what they found is that we're at the end of 2021 or 2020, we were at almost 61% built out. And by the end of year at 2021, we'll be at 69% built out. So an incredible growth surge has happened over the past 5 years. And in the past year, particularly, when we saw so many buildings, residentially especially, deliver. This was fully supported by 2 rounds of sub-area planning that Ted and Jeff coordinated over the past year, where we heard directly from our property owners and developers as to what they were doing currently and what they expected to do in terms of planning for new development, but also what were the issues and opportunities and lingering problems that we needed to address going forward. They also produced the development reports that are issued quarterly, and they revamped it to create a new cover page that has a number of tiles that convey a lot of different information. And we started asking different questions regarding how the pandemic has impacted you and your developments, from leasing of apartments to occupancy in hotels to leasing of retail space, and what businesses were forced to close. Some of the key takeaways: with over 1,600 new units of housing delivered in the third quarter of this past year. We did see a decrease in residential rates due to the pandemic, but we maintained pretty steady occupancy rates in all of our stabilized buildings at 90%. So this is very valuable information that our developers, our property owners use on a daily basis when thinking about what are our future development projects and what we do to keep the development needle moving forward. Residential was certainly the success story of the year. You can see by the photographs there of what delivered from Marin to the Kelvin, and in between the Watermark and the Garrett, all beautiful Class A properties. We had recent groundbreakings with the Verge and Buzzard Point, Parcel I and the Yards, and 720 L Street in Lower Barracks Row. Greystar Apartments continued on the old CSX site directly beneath the Southeast-Southwest Freeway. And we saw 1000 South Capitol Street by Lerner and 37L progress as well. So residential has been our foundational land use, if you will, and it's actually helping with our population growth. Ted and Jeff created this very colorful and beautiful chart that really shows our housing production, but how that leads to new population growth. And by the end of 2021, we think we'll have over 16,000 residents. And by the end of 2022, we'll be approaching almost 20,000 on our way to almost 36,000 residents in this new riverfront community that is very, very high density and sits on top of the Green Line. Existing, we have over 1,100 housing units in 42 multifamily buildings. And under construction right now, almost 2,500 housing units in 10 projects. This is quite an effort by our property owners and developers. But that wasn't the only market segment that was moving along. Office exhibited steady growth. We now have 6.5 million square feet with 35,000 employees and 3 buildings under construction with almost 580,000 square feet. ADM is going through a serious addition of 2 levels to the top of their building. The Yards has Chemonics headquarters building under construction. They're topped out and adding the facade. 1M, the NAB, National Association of Broadcasters headquarters building delivered, and they are now occupying that with a smaller force on site. And then 250M at Canal has delivered, and DDOT will be moving into that at the end of this month and early February to be the new headquarters for DDOT in our neighborhood. Now, like in residential, all the trends weren't rosy. With the impacts of COVID-19 exhibited in teleworking and most of the workforce working from home, metro ridership has suffered. I'm so glad they will receive stimulus fund to help with their operations and continued operation and rail travel and bus travel. And we're still trying to understand how the office market is being redefined by COVID-19 and how will it come back and what will it look like. And I think you're going to hear some of those discussions from Chris Lineberger today as part of the COVID-19 panel. Hospitality, another one of the hard-hit core industries that Elliott Ferguson can speak to. But we did see the construction on the 200-key AC Marriott Hotel, which is part of the Greystar properties. This hotel fronts New Jersey Avenue across from the Whole Foods. You can see it there in the image. We also saw approval for 45 Q Street, a new hotel down in Buzzard Point, as well as the Cambria was verging on opening. So 3 new hotels in or adjacent to our neighborhood, but occupancy rates did go below 30%, a very drastic decline. Leisure and business travel did plummet and seriously impacted those occupancy rates. So the hotels became created and started pivoting towards office getaway conference rooms and staycation-friendly opportunities within your own neighborhood. They remain open, and we are seeing construction, but we know it's a hard road for them, and we appreciate what they have contributed to our neighborhood in the hospitality tourism industry. And you can see that growth since 2006 when the Marriott Courtyard first opened to now with the AC Marriott. We'll have over 1,000 hotel rooms in our Capitol Riverfront neighborhood, and that's quite a trajectory as well. And retail and restaurants have been severely hit. We were fortunate to see over the past year, 10 new or 11 new shops, restaurants, and services open. You can see the litany of them in the tiles there, from Atlas Brewery to Albee and Maxwell Park and a new AT&T store, Mazida Bakery and Coffee Shop, the MedStar Clinics, a second CVS. These were all wonderful additions to our neighborhood support retail scene. You can see we have 80 food and beverage and 50 other retail for a total of 130 total retailers. But the news wasn't all good. We lost 5 retailers during the pandemic: Roy Boys, Pete's Coffee, the Juice Laundry, Willow Goods, and the GNC store, and experienced 3 seasonal closings in Declaration, Maialino, Mare, and Willie's Brew and Q. And we hope that they're going to reopen when times get better. But we do appreciate the restaurants and retailers and service industry that did open during this time and to remain open. And at this time, we'd like to give a special shout out to those restaurateurs and retailers. This was an especially trying year for them, just like the other core economies, and the way they exhibited creativity and the ability to pivot and reinvent themselves to serve the local community was nothing short of outstanding and inspirational to all of us. They have served the needs of others in the community, and they've really kept the spirits of our residents high by affording them the opportunity to get takeout, dine indoors for a while, dine outdoors. So these were, just like our open spaces, they were community relief valves where people could get out of their apartments and their homes and go get a beautiful meal and fine meal at one of our restaurants. But they did other things like hosting virtual pride dances and providing free laundry services to the restaurant's back of house employees. They teamed up with the World Central Kitchen as well to provide meals and deliver meals. And they were constantly supporting their staff and keeping them employed and valuable members of our community. And the bid was very, very proud to highlight their work through our continual campaign, Cap Riv Cares campaign in 2020. And we will continue to work with them and celebrate them and support them in the coming year, because we're not out of the woods yet, as you all know. But thank you again to those retailers for they were so resilient. And Bonnie and her team of Grace and Emily did an amazing job of marketing and branding and forming and keeping the spirit of community going in our neighborhood, from the virtual meetup series to the River in Focus photography exhibit along the river, to the date night challenge and social contest, and the Beauty of Buzzard Point mural, which is a wonderful public art addition, and new light pole banners that celebrate getting out and experiencing the neighborhood. These were all excellent examples of how you support a community. We had 800 participants in our virtual meetup series. Those 294 new street pole banners add some color and life to the public realm. And we experienced over 418 new media hits this year, which was pretty remarkable considering we were in the midst of a pandemic. But it didn't end there. We had the Cap Riv virtual fitness series, the pulp-up scavenger hunt, the Pumpkins in the Park, which was one of our few socially distanced outdoor events where people could attend. We celebrated the 10-year anniversary of the Friday night concerts with our virtual Friday night concert series attendance, and then had drive-in movies. And you can see those numbers of over 1,000 attended those movies. We raised over $11,000 for local charities, almost 11,000 virtual attendees and those 200 attendees at Pumpkins in the Park. I think people crave outdoor interaction and social gathering. But other events created 200,000 impressions of our neighborhood and branded us. We put back $5,000 into the local businesses and restaurants as part of these efforts. And then other events raised over $7,500 for neighborhood charities and citywide charities. But from the Cap Riv, the 12 days of Cap Riv and our community tree lighting with the Brass Funk Crush Band, to giveaways and holiday boxes and the photos with Santa for our pets, these were well attended and I think created a sense of community when that had been lacking. And it was very important for that to occur. And I appreciate what the 12 days of Cap Riv did for our neighborhood. And then what Dan and Tony did in our parks, the Canal Park and the Yards Park, when they closed, I challenged them to, let's undertake new maintenance projects that we can get done while people aren't supposedly in the park. So they did, with boardwalk repairs and lighting repairs and new bollard installations and bench repairs and repairs to the Canal Park Basin's rubber lining and new tree installations. So that when the parks reopened, they were beautiful and usable. And we saw attendance and usage surge beyond any of our expectations. These were bright lights and a wonderful opportunity to be outside. But we also deployed new signage reminding people to socially distance, wear masks, and here were the rules of the road to be safe and socially distant in our parks. So this really brought in the clean team in a big way. We saw a huge increase in trash, and so they were involved in pickup and removal. We detailed new security MPD off-duty officers to maintain proper distancing and social distancing and mask wearing. And our residents discovered new outdoor living rooms, such as the Riverwalk Trail and the new plaza space at Dock 79, where Saltline and All-Purpose Pizza are. So I think this really did reinforce the value of parks and open space and access to the Anacostia River as one of our constants in our neighborhood. Very important during the pandemic times. So that was a quick review, a look back in the rearview mirror, if you will. So what are we going to be focusing on looking ahead? We certainly have 2021 focal points as we're in that year now. Our fiscal year started in October, so we had been noodling that over the summer. So Ted and Jeff are focusing on the M Street mobility study in concert with DDOT and a private consultant. And we look forward to that. We have the new car-free bus lanes for buses and bikes that are painted red that we hope lead to permanent BRT bus lanes in our neighborhood. We will continue to support our local businesses. They are the lifeblood of our community in many, many ways on a number of levels. So we'll keep doing promotions and driving people and gift card giveaways and special events. Residential attraction remains as important as ever. With new units delivering, we want people to come live in the Capitol Riverfront. We think it's a wonderful neighborhood, so we'll be doubling down on those. efforts. And fostering community is essential to creating community in our neighborhood. It's very, very important. And the office market, while we're not certain what's going to happen there, we think we have opportunities to grow it, that people will be looking for office markets that offer different amenities like open space access and the river as your front yard, and a sense of less density there. While we are a dense neighborhood, we do feel more open because of our parks and river spaces. And then our team and we're going to embark on something we're calling our strategic initiatives effort to achieve build out over the next 5 years. And that's a hard look on what are the things we need to do on a big scale and even a micro scale to ensure our neighborhood moves forward. One such example is building upon the new South Capitol Street or Frederick Douglass Bridge and the Memorial Ellipse, and making sure the corridor north of that ellipse achieves greatness for the intersection at M Street and I Street, and for the removal of the ramp up to 395 and 295, and that New Jersey Avenue becomes an amazing streetscape experience south of the Capitol to our neighborhood, to and from. So these are the sort of things we'll be looking at over the next 6 months and presenting to our board, and then we'll guide our work programs throughout 2021 and over the next 4 years. So I hope that gives you an idea of what we've been working on and what we're going to be doing going forward. And now I'd like to introduce the panel, and I'm very interested to hear this because I know all of these folks very, very well. We're going to do a deep dive into what were the impacts on COVID-19 on the office sector, the restaurant retail sector, and the hospitality tourism sector. And it's going to be moderated by a dear friend of mine, Natalie Avery, who is the executive director of the Javera Group, but was also the executive director of the Bid Council for almost 6 years. And I respect Natalie and her ability to research and understand issues, and I look forward to your moderation. Chris Lineberger, he's one of the great researchers and placemakers in our community. He has created and is the founder of Places Platform. He is an emeritus professor at GW University. He's done research for us. So Chris, I look forward to your comments and your insights into the office market. What can we say about Kathy Hollinger, who has communicated so well on behalf of her constituents over the past year? She is the president and CEO of the Restaurant Association of Metropolitan Washington, and she and her team have done yeoman's work in keeping connected to her constituents and informing them and helping them with business assistance and access to stimulus funds. And Elliot Ferguson, the bright light of hospitality tourism, is the president and CEO of Destination DC, doing a similar thing of trying to understand what's impacting his constituents and how they can pivot and return to normalcy in the next 2 to 3 to 4 years. So Natalie, I'm going to turn it over to you. I look forward to what you and the panel have to say, and Godspeed and good luck. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael, for that warm welcome and for the opportunity to facilitate this amazing group of panelists. And I want to thank the audience too for being here today on this very difficult to concentrate week. And of course, to our panelists for taking time out of their busy schedules to share their insights and their wisdom. So as Michael said in the introduction, the purpose of today's conversation is to take a deep dive into 3 of the district's core industries, the restaurant sector, the hospitality and destination tourism market, and the office economy, and look at how they're interconnected and also helping to get a sense of how recovery is unfolding. And some of the challenges around that. We're going to hear from each of our industry experts about how COVID-19 has impacted and even potentially reshaped those industries. And we're going to talk about what policies and programs have been helpful, what are some of the lessons learned in the early phases of the pandemic that can support recovery moving forward. So this discussion is going to last about 35 to 40 minutes. So it's going to fly by. We're not going to have time for audience questions. You'll notice that the Q&A function is disabled, but if you should like to follow up on anything you've heard today, please reach out to the bid at info@capitolriverfront.org. So 2021 was supposed to be better. We're supposed to be seeing a light at the end of the tunnel, and maybe there will be, but here we are experiencing another trauma in DC, having just witnessed a attempted white supremacist insurrection just around the corner from the Capitol Riverfront. And it's bringing even more pain and uncertainty and cost to our city's local government residents, businesses. So while this conversation was planned to focus on recovery from the pandemic, I just want to acknowledge that what's happening adds new complexities. So I know for our panelists, I'm sure that you're still processing everything that is going on, but please feel free to address this new dimension in your responses. So let's dive in. So first, I want to give each of you a chance to share an overview of the impacts that you've seen over the last year on your industry, and to tell us what, if anything, has surprised you in how you see recovery unfolding in the short and long term. So Elliot, let's turn to you first. Give us a lay of the land. What has happened to the district's destination tourism and hospitality sector in the last year? And what, if any, lasting effects on that industry do you foresee? And how is recovery unfolding? What does it look like to you?
Oh, Natalie, I have to start with a deep sigh, simply because it is going to be it's a difficult year for us. 2020 has been tough. I jokingly say that I technically won't consider the new year until January 20th, because hopefully we'll turn.
Yes.
Now we're the third or the 55th week of 2020, and hopefully we'll see a turn soon. But with all seriousness, I think that when you think about hospitality and the number of jobs, nearly 80,000 jobs in Washington, D.C., and the overall economic impact of this industry on Washington, D.C., it's easy to make general assumptions, like people automatically want to come to Washington, D.C. because it's Washington, and that's not always the case. And sometimes to not really pay attention to the $900 million of tax revenue that's generated solely by those visitors that are coming to the city, which we all benefit from through various services that are in place. I moved here right after 9/11 in December 2001. And so my entire career here in Washington has been tied to dealing with issues from 9/11 to sniper to anthrax, 2008, 2009, and government shutdowns. And this is a tough one, simply because there's just no sense of when we'll be able to rebound. The moment we think we're moving in the right direction, whereas, in the case of restaurants, we see 50% occupancy and or whatever, and museums opening, then we go back into a shutdown mode. The moment we look at the inauguration, which is normally a significant financial opportunity for the city, and we say, okay, well, we're shutting it down to a certain extent, and then January 6th happens. And now the city is, now any individual that may have still chosen to come to Washington is not coming. So the reality for us is that recovery is going to be a long-term thing. Internationally, it's going to probably take until 2024 to see the international visitors coming back to the United States and therefore to Washington. And domestically, clearly the good thing about Washington, a lot of free things. So if you're looking at a limited or compromised budget, and the fact that we've got nearly 50 million people that live within close proximity to Washington, D.C., there are opportunities for us to see those individuals potentially travel to the city. Looking at it from an economic perspective, we're down $4.9 billion in spending. Hotel revenue is down $1.5 billion, and we've seen nearly $600 million in cancellations of major conventions that we hope will resume in July of this year, depending on where we are with the vaccine. So recovery is going to be slow and long globally, and of course in the US. And for Washington, D.C., it's going to be the same. We're not going to be able to really realize maybe some of the numbers in terms of conventions and visitors to the city probably well until the latter part of 2022.
Thank you. Kathy, let's turn to you. So one of the things that's special about the district's restaurant industry is how many are independently operated. So this is one of the things that would be great to hear from you about as you talk about the impacts. How has the fact that so many of your operators are local small businesses impacted how the experience of the pandemic and all of the other events of 2020 and now 2021, and how do you see recovery unfolding, and what are some of the special impacts given the sort of the makeup of your industry?
Yes, so we all start with a big sigh, right?
So yes, in DC, in this really in the local regional market, we are 94% independently owned and operated, whether you are a unique, locally owned fast casual concept or whether you are a full service restaurant. And honestly, for years and years and years, we were bragging because that makes us really unique as a local region, but it makes us incredibly vulnerable during this time and has. I think that what is so different about our industry specifically is that we didn't really ever close, but our operations and these restaurants' operations were modified so significantly that on one level, there was this need and willingness and desire for the operator, but also for the jurisdictions that these small businesses as food service establishments remain open in some way. But of course, you know, a local small business and locally owned, they don't necessarily have the infrastructure that some of the larger restaurant groups or larger chains have, where they can pull support and possible infrastructure to support a challenged operation. And this is really outside of the pandemic in general, that operating philosophy, but you also see it manifest in how these small businesses had to, yes, the overused word of pivot, how they had to rethink, what do I need to do to stay open with how many people, although I have furloughed 90% of my workforce, how do I still keep this operation open modestly to be able to serve the community, but also keep the lights on? So we know that, and yes, we've started, to Elliot's point, we kind of started, stopped. The indoor dining pause was a very huge blow for us. We were only operating at 25% occupancy. And while there are many reasons why that needed to happen or should happen, what I will say, and we're going to probably talk about this a little later, our restaurant community is already, they have to adhere to the strictest standards of health and safety. So it gave a little bit of a opportunity to have the socially distanced meal in a footprint that could allow for that. So that was a really huge blow. Yes, this is a week where people would historically, businesses, hotels, Elliot talks about this often, we would be welcoming so many people into the region. Restaurants would be generating so much in terms of revenue and business. And how heartbreaking, truly heartbreaking it is as we try to drive around the city, as restaurant owners and operators are doing their best to figure out what do we even do day to day leading into the weekend before inauguration. So recovery will be long. And we knew that recovery is going to be long, but I am hopeful, and I'm trying to keep our folks rooted in some hope of better weather, springtime, summertime, because while recovery will be very long, we are probably an industry within the larger hospitality industry that will have some of those steps that they can take on the early end of trying to be a part of the first phases of recovery. Residents across the region have been amazing supporting their restaurant community. They want to. Of course, the visitors are critical, but recovery will be long, and we will be hopeful to take some steps towards that in the spring.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Chris, let's turn to the office market. So you recently co-authored a Cushman & Wakefield report on the state of the office market globally, and it provides a generally positive outlook on the repopulation of major office submarkets, especially in walkable urban places. So it's not as doom and gloom as I think a lot of people were feeling it would be. So can you tell us a little bit more about the major findings from that report, and also zoom in on the district's office market? What are some of the characteristics of submarkets that look to fare pretty well? And what should stakeholders be thinking about as they support recovery?
Well, you took my headline, Natalie. So yes, exactly. I've got a bit more positive outlook than the previous two industries that we just looked at. And I did not expect it when we first started this. So Cushman approached me to help them figure out the future of office. And so I brought my George Washington School of Business team to focus on this. And I thought up front that what the study was going to be was how we're going to have to reposition 20 to 40% of the office market. It obviously did not turn out like that. I also want to mention just the importance of business improvement districts and place management in general to the recovery. It is critical that place management is what I refer to as the fourth level of governance in our society: federal, state, local, place. And it's where we're moving throughout the economy. But in the recovery from the pandemic, place management is going to be key to making this happen, as I'll point out. We looked at the 4 reasons that we have office and examined them, not just during the pandemic, but also what we expect the post-pandemic to be. The first, of course, is productivity, and the surprising finding that I think we all found in this forced experiment in remote working, at least for those people that could afford and would have the skill sets and would have the business to allow you to work from home, is that productivity did not suffer. We were all surprised by that. However, the last few months, we begin to have what I think we're all calling Zoom fatigue, and that there is a real question as to where work ends and where home starts. I was on a call the other day with some students, and one of the students was, like a lot of us, working from their bedroom. And about 10 minutes in, you could see the bed behind them, and all of a sudden there was movement on the bed. His roommate was waking up. This is a weird way to work, guys. But productivity's held up, but it's put a lot of strain on family life. It's put a lot of strain. You know, the physical constraints, our apartments and homes were not built for this. So that's held up. The 3 other reasons for office that we looked at, which include innovation, and that's particularly important in a knowledge economy, corporate culture, that every organization has a culture and it's critical to their success. And number 3 is employee engagement. All 3 are being crushed. And I liken it to a university endowment. When you have $1 billion university endowment, you can spend 3-4% of that per year without dipping into the fundamental capital base and the long-term viability of that endowment. And this last year, by necessity, we've been withdrawing 10 to 15% out of that endowment. That is not sustainable. And we know that innovation is not happening as well, as spontaneously as those 5-minute water cooler conversations, as dropping into somebody's office. Instead, it's all rigidly scheduled. Innovation has not happened on schedule ever. So we know, since 50% of the entire economy is in the knowledge economy, innovation's hurting. And that we got to get back to work in office for that. And as far as corporate culture and employee engagement, the research shows very clearly that, surprisingly, we baby boomers have done quite well through this pandemic. It's the younger workers that are feeling isolated. They don't have a chance to wave their flag. They don't get the kind of hands-on personal training from their senior managers. So we know we have to get back to the office for that. So what our research showed, both the modeling that we did a lot of simulation modeling and looked at lots of comparables, is that the future is not binary. There's going to be more and more hybrid working, but it's not going to be extremely more. In 2019, according to the US Census, that 22% of us that worked in offices during any given week worked at home at least once during that week. So 22%. We're projecting, based upon our research and based upon our modeling, that it's going to probably go up to 30%, but it's not going to go to 50%. It's not going to go to 80%. So that's going to have an impact on net absorption. But that impact is going to be quite modest. We think that the net absorption over the next 4 or 5 years will probably be reduced by 20%, but it's going to get lost in the data, as you know, in all the, net absorption numbers bounce all around. It's going to be hard from the 2025 perspective to really figure out what the pandemic did to net absorption. But our sense is, looking back from 2025, it's going to be viewed as a bump in the road. One of the interesting things, we did a series of focus groups with place managers, but also with some of the largest office owners in the world, including some from Capitol Riverfront, and also some of the largest tenants in the world. And my favorite, there are 2 quotes that came out. One was from a huge worldwide organization that the head of real estate said, you don't know what you've got until you lose it. And we now know how important the office is to our ongoing functioning as an organization. The second quote was from one of the largest office owners worldwide, saying that our offices in China, Taiwan, South Korea, which have done far better in dealing with the pandemic, because we've had miserable leadership at the top, we all know, in this country, and that they've done much better, and they're back. The new normal in China and Taiwan and South Korea is the old normal. So there's a comparable for you. But he also said that they've been leasing hundreds of thousands of square feet, particularly to tech companies. And he was chuckling, saying, all these tech CEOs are saying, oh, workers, you can work from home as, just as long as you want. And his quote was, they're lying. That all these companies are, in fact, Facebook just leased 750,000 square feet in the new Moynihan station, the new Pennsylvania station up in New York during the pandemic. They're coming back. So probably by, once we get the vaccine distributed, once we get herd immunity, we're guessing late 2021, the bulk of the office market will be coming back. So the question is, how can we recover? And this is where the bid and place management comes in. It's crucial that we have to go back to basics in the place management industry. That means clean and safe. We need to recapture the street, re-civilize the street. We have to really focus. I mean, it goes back to the lessons we learned in the bad old days of the 1980s, 1990s. And we need our homeless programs to kick into high gear. We need to, clean and safe will become the mantra of 2021 to bring back these great places. But I have no doubt, and of course, working with retailers, one of the things I'm hoping place managers will do, and this is an important thing for this meeting in particular, is the place managers act as a bridge between the retailers and the building owners. Because it makes no sense to throw those retailers out because they can't pay the rent right now. You've got a known commodity and you need to work a deal to make those retailers open up sooner. And that is going to involve taking a haircut. And that's just the reality of it. It's either a haircut with somebody you know or a haircut with somebody you don't. So we think it's coming back, and the bid has a crucial role to play in making that happen.
Thank you. So, I mean, one thing that really strikes me about this whole conversation is the interconnectedness, the ecosystem that these industries create. And Kathy, as you're listening to Chris and thinking about sort of issues of place and policies and programs that are going to help recovery, can you talk about what you think is going to help? What are the policies and programs that are going to really help recovery the most? But also, like, let's hone in on this issue of place and the role that people who sort of manage and mediate place-based issues have played, and what you've learned from during the pandemic.
Yeah. So first, I will say that, you know, much of what Chris shared, I'm delighted by. I think that is very encouraging data, very encouraging feedback. You know, some of what I will share in terms of my thinking on what needs to be done and what needs to happen, you know, unfortunately, it's not very popular. And I will say that what I appreciate, one thing Chris said, people have to be willing to come to the table. Like, this is not a you lose, we win, you win, we lose. Everybody has to be able and willing to understand that if we are going to get through this, everyone has something to lose. And I'm pretty passionate about that point as it relates to, yes, some of what we have pushed to make sure that in the city, but across the region, that is in place. Outside of, yes, microgrants were amazing. And it was like, it was addressing that immediate need for cash and access to credit, which is what small businesses need. But it's things like, you know, the tenant payment program. It's things like, we have been in this city for 25 years and we are not in a position right now to pay. We're barely operating. So we need that relationship with the owner or the landlord to be fluid and to be kind and understand that no one in this pandemic should feel that they are winning in any possible way when so many people are losing. So I think that there are so many opportunities to push for additional relief, whether it's additional grants, additional regulations, but I'm also very mindful of pushing over regulation versus a conversation and willingness for people to come to the table to create the solutions themselves. I don't want the government over-regulating the restaurant industry, nor do I want to go and tell the government to over-regulate third-party delivery platforms when restaurants are so dependent on them right now, nor do I want the government to over-regulate landlords and building owners. So I think place managers are going to be incredibly important in pulling those stakeholders together. But I'm telling you, there has to be that willingness to come to the table with what everyone is in a position to do to help, to know that they may lose a little to be able to take the steps forward and recover. But, you know, as I said, microgrant was incredible in terms of the kind of regulation, the kind of grants, the kind of programs that need to be in place. The Bridge Fund, huge in DC. The winterization regs that went into place and the grants there. Alcohol to go, huge savior for our industry. So some of this is, yes, let's continue and extend in other jurisdictions, unlike DC, to make this more permanent, knowing that consumer behavior and culture has changed so much, to be able to meet the consumer, to be able to meet the employee where they are, to be able to take the steps forward. But I would welcome to be a part of any conversations, Chris, with place managers to talk about the importance of the tenant owner or landlord relationship, because, you know, we've got one chance to make this right and at least be able to take the steps forward to approach recovery on some level. But we all have to really be committed to solutions versus counting on the government to do that for us.
Agreed.
That's-
You know, I've been a developer as well in the past, and I've cut leases with restaurants, and it's well understood in a real estate that your tenant is a partner. Literally, it's not just a fuzzy term. When you do a tenant improvement build out, it's a $200, $300 per square foot build out, and maybe all of it is being put in there by the office owner or by the building owner. You've got skin in the game. So, you know, you're a partner. Sit down with your partner and figure it out.
Yes. And if I could say one more thing, Natalie, because I would be completely remiss. We have amazing partners in this space who have very much stepped up and started those conversations proactively back in March with their tenants, because they do absolutely believe that they are partners in this. And as they win, as the tenant wins, they too win. So I would say that it's more of an overarching priority for me to have partners who are not constantly feeling that all of us need to go to the government, as amazing as they have been, and particularly for our industry in passing much needed relief, really more so than any other jurisdiction across the country. DC should feel so proud. The DC Council was phenomenal and the mayor was phenomenal, and other jurisdictions are envious of even the modest relief that we received. So as we speak about relief, I will say that as great as the government is, we shouldn't have to always rely on them versus coming up with solutions ourselves, knowing that we are all insightful leaders who can do so.
Thank you. That's so important. And so, Elliot, I'm going to turn back to you, because one of the things I think that has been interesting about this past experience with all the hardship and struggle has also been, and you can check me if I'm wrong on this, but sort of a greater understanding of how these various industries and in our city sort of form this ecosystem that's so important to look at how they intersect, how they interact, and why that it's not, and sort of getting away from this like either this succeed, like Kathy was saying, either there's growth or there's something, you know, there's like this is either or thing. So can you talk about what, if anything, you've learned or you during this whole experience of helping to promote the kind of conversations that Kathy is talking about, to get out of this either or dichotomy that shapes a lot of our conversations?
And I'll apologize. I don't know what's happened in my office, but I think I'm fighting the sun. You know, I think Chris put it best. You know, you don't know what you got until it's gone. And I'll give credit to Joni Mitchell and Janet Jackson in my regards. But you know, ours is an industry where, you know, people assume that everyone wants to come to Washington D.C. And that's just not the case. And at the same time, as you look at what we do, it's economic development. So the question is, do I want the person from Pennsylvania to come to Washington? Yes, but they're going to spend on average $200 per visit. The Chinese visitor spends $6,000 on average per visit. So the question is, who do I want more? Who does the restaurants, the hotels, and all the other variables that are in the Capitol Riverfront bid that are being built, who do they want more to come? They want everyone. But at the same time, we're looking at those that are going to spend more and stay longer. So we look at it through a different, unique dynamic in terms of how can we make sure that we are open to everyone, including the 8th grader who comes to Washington, does all the free things, and unfortunately goes and eats at Chipotle. I know because I see them, but they don't have as large as an economic impact versus those that are going to come spend on retail and do other things in the city. As an organization, we're a 501c6. We are private nonprofit, but we're focusing on promoting DC as a destination. And what makes us in a larger capacity, the question is, well, why do we need that? You know, people automatically want to come to Washington. right now, as you started, Natalie, talking, the global community is now rethinking the U.S. as a global superpower. They're once again rethinking the safety of coming to Washington. We already had pandemics, the pandemic, which we clearly have not done a good job on, but we've also had mass shootings and all these other variables. So the 5 offices I have globally are always giving us insight as to what does China think of Washington versus what does New Zealand and Australia and other parts of the world. And one size does not fit all because they all have different perspectives. Right now, if the borders were open, more than likely we would see a significant dip in visitation to Washington, D.C. simply because of what happened last week. And that's a fact. It starts with safety. It starts with a lack of a significant concern for democracy in the U.S., and it goes on and on from there. And everyone hurts in that case. January is not a strong month for meetings, conventions, tourism, but when you look at something like inauguration, it is a shot in the arm. I chair the U.S. Travel Association, and we are focusing on all things tied to making sure that the current and more than likely the new administration understand the importance of this industry. For the first time, a 501c6, we've been eligible for PPP. And as you know, I definitely want restaurants, I want hotels, I want all facets of industry in Washington to have these much needed resources. But as an organization that will be responsible for promoting the 5 hotels, I believe that was referenced that are in the bid, some that have just opened, and the restaurants and the retail and all the other things that are happening in the city, all those dynamics, when Chris and when Kathy are looking at, and someone's reaching out to them about opening new space in Washington, D.C., their first question is, how strong is the industry as it pertains to visitation? And that is solely our responsibility. And the unique thing for us, we're not a state, so there's no state tourism organization. It's just us. So we rely very heavily on the Restaurant Association and the Hotel Association to deal with all the dynamics tied to the health of of those industries, so that we can market DC through a different lens. Monuments, memorials, and museums, very important in Washington, D.C., and great reasons to visit. And for the most part, a lot of them are free. But when you think about nightlife and theater and sporting events and restaurants and all the other things in which we want to bring and advertise in terms of bringing people to the city, that's where we fall short, because that's not the global perspective of DC as a destination. So light at the end of the tunnel for us is that when we look at what we do from an economic development perspective, we know that if we are successful with this vaccine being administered in a very short term, then we know that we'll have a stronger opportunity within 90 days to see a return on investment, simply because people will want to come to Washington, D.C. Again, the recovery will still be slow. We had 10 years to get up to 24 million visitors in Washington, D.C., and we were doing so well through 2019. We were ahead of the curve in all different areas, but now we're gonna go backwards, and we're gonna have to move a lot slower. We're gonna have to think of it through a different lens as we're looking at recovery. And keeping in mind, it took us 10 years to recover after 9/11 in terms of the total number of visitors coming to Washington from the year 2000 to the year 2010. So there are opportunities, and that's what we're going to be focusing on as we're all looking at economic development through tourism and hospitality.
So as I expected, this has totally flown by. So I want to give you guys a chance to have some closing thoughts, and listening to all of you and listening to you, Elliot, just now. It seems like a lot of what you're saying has to do with the quality of leadership at the city level. And that doesn't just mean our government leaders, but everyone who is part of making our city places work, and recognizing the interconnectedness between office, resident, jobs, social programs. I mean, all of those things are so interconnected. And as you're giving your closing remarks, what are some bright spots? What are some things that you have learned through this pandemic that give you, and the other things that have happened, that give you some hope in terms of building and looking at our city as a way of having a building block towards a better future. Kathy, you want to start? I hope that was clear.
Yes. I will say, I have learned so much. I think we as an industry have learned so much. I say this often, we are such a tight-knit community. And I'm so grateful for that. And I feel that the restaurant community is as well. But putting the restaurant community aside, I have felt so fortunate over the last 8 years that I've been in this role that I have, a friend and partner in Elliott. I have a friend and partner in Solomon Keene, who runs the Hotel Association, and a friend and partner in Greg Odell, who runs Events DC. We are an alliance of hospitality. And honestly, just the check-ins and I'm here to position you and your industry and your organization to succeed outside of a pandemic has been a jewel in terms of getting through this period. But as an industry, we are going to look really different. We know that there are going to be restaurants that close. We know that there are going to be operations that are going to choose to do things very differently. Yes, when they were in survival mode in March and April, but a lot of nuggets that they could have gleaned along the way as they think future forward, that are more efficient, that are streamlined, that meet the diner where they may be psychologically or emotionally to still be able to support the industry. Again, I just want us to get to January 20th. So to Elliott's point, yes, we can start 2021 and maybe make up a little bit for 2020 if possible. But I do think that there are some great things ahead. It's just not in our immediate future. I think as we look different, we are independently owned and operated. Our chefs and restaurant owners, to my knowledge, are not going anywhere. That talent base is here. So it may look different, but it's still here. And I think that we're going to have some really fun things to look forward to in terms of what they have in store for us, because good gracious, they did a great job in 2020, reimagining, reinventing, and pivoting.
Thank you. That's a hopeful note amidst all this. Chris, the two of you have about a minute and a half each. So give us your hopeful comments.
Sure. Well, walkable urban places have been redeveloping over the last 20 years. Capitol Riverfront is one of the best models in the country. And it's even better because it is one metro stop away from the poorest ward in the city, bringing jobs close to Ward 8. It's a remarkable success story. But we have competition. We've already, walkable urban places have pretty much whipped business parks, drivable only business parks. But there's an emerging competitor that will make us just better in the center city, and that is the urbanizing suburb. Obviously, National Landing is the biggest mover there recently because of HQ2, but obviously Bethesda, downtown Bethesda, and Reston Town Center and National Harbor, downtown Silver Spring, great places that are going to be increasingly competitive with us. So we in the center city have to up our game. But the second thing that is more important for us in the center city is that we only have two legs to the stool for the office market. One is the feds, and the other is professional services. We need to double down on innovation, on the knowledge economy. And I'm working, George Washington University is in joint venture with the Golden Triangle Business Improvement District on an innovation district along Pennsylvania Avenue. We need more tech jobs, research jobs in the city. And that's what the next move is going to be.
Okay, great. Elliott.
All right, I'll be quick. I think the key thing for us is exactly what's happening in the Capitol Riverfront bid, a combination of retail, restaurants, people physically living in an environment, and of course, office space. That's what Washington needs, because for us, it's more than just selling downtown Washington. It's about selling our neighborhoods, to the point that Chris was making. It also ties to the stability at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue for our industry. We've got to focus on getting on top of the pandemic. We've got to focus on things that Washington, the city of Washington itself, cannot manage without proper federal leadership. And once those things are in place, and again, I'm optimistic about our industry. I think it will rebound faster. It will be slow, and it will be painful, especially for those that were looking at it through a lens leading from 2019 to 2020. But I feel that I'm pretty confident that we'll be able to move forward and be able to market DC and bring more people back to the city.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you. Of course, this flew by so fast. I would love to keep hearing your insights and words of wisdom. And I'm glad to end on a hopeful note. And thank you for all your incredibly hard work this difficult year. And Michael, I will turn it back to you. Thank you for the opportunity to facilitate today.
Natalie, thank you so much for stepping in and moderating an excellent panel. I knew it was going to be in good hands with you. I do want to thank you, but also thank Chris, who is one of the brightest research stars in our constellation and nationally. So thank you for your insights and observations, my friend. You give me hope. And Kathy and Elliot, I can think of no two better leaders to be leading your associations and your organizations and your industries than you are. You are passionate, you are responsible, you are dedicated, and you remain hopeful. And I so appreciate that as well. So this is a very educational and aspirational, and I know you've been through very, very hard times and we're not out of the woods yet, but I like to think that this next photo hopefully gives us I am hopeful for a return to unbridled joy. And this is one of my favorite scenes in all of our neighborhood is children jumping through the water wall into the canal basin at Yards Park. And that is unbridled joy and happiness at its best. And I wish all of us a return to that as soon as possible. It's not going to happen overnight, but with leaders such as yourself, thought leaders and action leaders, we're going to move the needle in the positive direction. So thank all of you on the panel for what you did to illustrate not only the issues, but where the kernels of optimism and hopefulness are in those industries and core economies. So thank you again. I appreciate it. I want to thank all of you for joining us today. I think it was for my first time to be doing a virtual annual meeting. It was big fun, but I thank you for joining us. I want to thank my team for pulling this together, and for the past year. I will be ever grateful for your contributions and your dedication to what we try to achieve at Capitol Riverfront and all the bids across the city. I remind you that we do have our annual report out there. Please download it. And I would encourage all of you to follow us on social media and through our newsletter. We are constantly trying to put information out into the public realm to make a better environment for businesses to thrive, for residents to enjoy life, for the workforce to come here and work, and for visitors to come and enjoy our riverfront community. And lastly, I want to thank my board of directors and Chair Adam Gooch and my executive committee for staying with us this whole time. This has been a challenging year, but what I found is that bids throughout this city are a constant foundation that many people do rely upon. And I want to echo what Kathy said, and Elliot and Chris, that the leadership exhibited by Mayor Bowser and the council, the way they've responded to the pandemic and were our partners in this and leaders in this, was extraordinary. So thank you all. I wish you all a good day. I wish you happiness. It's going to be another difficult year, I think, but I think through the networks we have and the partnerships we have and the friendships we have as professionals, that we'll continue to move the ball uphill towards the ultimate goal of a sense of returning normalcy and a very, very vibrant Washington, D.C. as a place to live, as a place to work, as a place to eat out and dine in, and as a place to recreate and enjoy the best of a walkable urban community. So thank you all. Good wishes to all. Happy New Year to all. And with that, we'll conclude the day. We're right on time again, 1:30. So perfect. And panel, thank you again. And thanks to my team. So we'll call it off right now. Thank you.